English football is about to get the biggest shake-up in decades. A football regulator is being introduced, a sort of overarching referee in a bid to protect the game from boardroom mismanagement and the threat of breakaway leagues. Because whilst it's known as the beautiful game, it's also a billion-pound business, and concern has been growing for years over the lack of regulation when it comes to club finances, ownership and broadcasting deals. Some clubs have even been lost to bankruptcy. We're here at Peterborough Football Club, one of the clubs at the beating heart of English football's pyramid, to chat to them and see what do they and their fans make of politicians getting stuck in to the running of the game. But first, Liam Askin takes us through the proposals.
The Premier League, a global powerhouse. It's the richest and most watched football league in the world. But even this financial giant couldn't avoid a crisis that rocked the game to its core. In 2021, plans for a European Super League sparked an unprecedented backlash. Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, Tottenham, Manchester United and City were forming their own breakaway league.
Manchester United as a football club, to vote for this is disgusting.
How can it be right to have a situation in which you create a kind of cartel that stops clubs competing against each other?
I do think it's the end of the sport that we loved. It truly is.
The idea of a closed-shop competition for the exclusive clashed with the idea of English football as a working-class game.
There were supporters who had been involved with their clubs for generations who felt that the very soul of their club was being ripped out by the ambition, or I would call it greed, of their owners. The Super League was a seismic disconnect.
Within 48 hours, the project collapsed, but it was clear fans wanted protection, not just promises. The UK government responded with a fan-led review, chaired by MP Tracy Crouch. It called for a new independent regulator to bring financial oversight, protect clubs from rogue owners, and give supporters a stronger voice.
Talked to a lot of fans throughout, different parts of the game, but we also spoke to, say, owners and authorities, and people were very open to the whole, suggestion around the need for extra regulation. At no point did people to us say that they thought that this was going to be a necessary burden on their business.
4 years on, the regulator will have the power to license clubs, block bad owners, and protect club heritage. And it's this 100-page document that is going to reshape the game and change the future of English football. But not everyone is on board.
I don't think politics should be anywhere near football.
Not in favour of government regulation. No. I think there was another way of solving the problem.
Then there's the financial might of the league.
Since the inception of the Premier League revenues have grown by 2,990% during a period of time in which consumer prices have increased by 122%, and EFL revenues have grown by 1,100. So the Premier League's, both organisations have been successful, but the Premier League has been 3 times as successful as the EFL, and therefore that gap, which there was a bit of a gap. Yeah, you think about it. Yeah, we're 33 years into this experiment. If I'm going 3 times as fast as you on the motorway for 300 miles, that's a big gap.
The Premier League's total club revenues of over €7 billion, nearly double that of its closest competitors across Europe. Its profits driven largely by massive broadcast income. The question now is whether the arrival of a football regulator will secure the game's long-term future, or is an own goal that slows English football's rise.
So we've come to visit League One side Peterborough United to speak to former player, manager, owner, even chairman, and now sporting director Barry Fry to get his thoughts on the incoming regulator. Barry, it's good to talk to you here at the home of the posh. So let's kick off by you telling me What does Peterborough FC mean to the local community and this city?
Well, it means everything. I've been here 30 years now, and, we've had our ups and downs, but we've had good times, we've had bad times. We're not the best supported club, although our supporters are magnificent, but there's not enough of them. So, obviously, every year we have to sell players to offset the losses, because the owner, Darren McAntony, who's been here to 20 years with me now, we sell players, but he always gives the manager more money to invest in other players, and we've done brilliant in the 20 years he's been here.
So it's brilliant, but it's a bit tough, I think is what you're saying.
Financially.
So what are your concerns about the state of football, particularly outside of the Premier League?
COVID killed everybody. It come from nowhere and affected everybody, and I am absolutely amazed we've managed to keep the 72 clubs in the EFL alive, because a lot of them was really, really on the brink, and we all struggled. And of course it affects below us as well in the National League and things like that.
So given what you've said about the difficulties of clubs in the English Football League being financially sustainable, will the new regulator sort that problem out?
No, I think football should sort its own house, put its own house in order.
So why hasn't it been able to do that?
Well, because the Premier League are very stubborn and they don't want to give anything up. But it's the Premier League's got bigger and bigger and bigger, and be playing in Mars soon, and they've forgot about the rest of us.
So Barry, having said all that, can you quantify how much money you would like to see now put into football with a new agreement?
No, I couldn't, but I'm a great believer in non-league football. I'm a great believer in the pyramid system. I think it gives loads of clubs. I mean, before all the non-league clubs was part-time. The majority now are full-time, and they're better run than League 2 and League 1, some of them. So they've got their house in order, but we all need a bit more money, a lot more money really, and the money it gets bigger and bigger and bigger every year, but we don't get too much of it.
There's been considerable publicity, negative publicity, over some management of football clubs by some boards, particularly when it came to putting clubs into insolvency. There's now going to be a test on the suitability of directors to run football clubs. Do you welcome that? Do you think that's a good idea?
Do. Yeah, I think too many clubs have been taken over by people that we know nothing about really, and they make a mess of the club's finances, and you're supposed to pass the fit and proper person, whatever level we're at, and there's a few escaped it for some reason or other, and I feel sorry for the supporters of all these clubs. At the minute we're talking about Morecambe, who might go out of business. We don't want another club to go out of business. When I first come into football 65 years ago, there was 92 clubs in the league then, and we was called a football family, and we looked after each other. That's gone out the window. We don't look after anybody now. The media and the Premier League don't care about anybody else but themselves.
At the heart of the regulator proposals, the politicians will tell us that it's all about the fans. No one speaks more passionately or for fans better than you, Barry. Are you satisfied that the regulator will act in the interest of fans?
Yeah, I think so. The fans are important for every club up and down the country, and they should have a voice. And I think everybody I speak to, whatever club they're at, think it's very unfair, the distribution of the finances now, and I couldn't agree more with them. So hopefully the regulator or football itself will put it right in the coming weeks, months.
If you had a politician here, what would you say to them? Have they done a good job to get the regulator on track, or is there more they could do, or should they do less?
No, I think it's a good idea that the EFL can't get anywhere with the Premier League or the FA. So if government steps in, then that's a good thing for every supporter up and down the country, whatever club you support.
Finally, where are you going to finish at the end of the season? We're not far from kick-off.
No, I'm very excited. My 30th year at Posh. I think 20th year with Darren McAntony when he bought the club off me and saved my life. And so hopefully it will finish off with promotion, but it's a tall order. Up the posh!
Absolutely. Barry Fry, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.
Pleasure.
So, we've heard what Barry Fry thinks, but what do the people of Peterborough think about these proposals?
In my opinion, they should stick to what they're doing, and they're not doing a very good job of that at the moment, so why get involved in something they know little about? So, that's my view.
I'm not particularly sure why that would be necessary, to be honest with you. I'm sure if they did it would probably be for some financial gain, but I think football should just be football, so however they're doing it now should be great.
Yeah, for me, I'm a capitalist. I don't want government to be involved in too much. Government is involved already in so many things, so we need people, private people to be free to choose whatever they want to do, the sport they want to do.
Football players earn a lot of money, don't they? So I don't think the government should get involved. I'll just leave them to it.
I think it's a good thing in a way. I think it's become very money orientated, and your modern day fan is getting punished left, right and centre financially. So yeah, I do think it's a good thing.
Do you think the government and politicians should be involved in running of the game?
No, not at all.
Why is that?
No, well, I don't think a lot of them really know all that about it. Really, they should just stick to the politicians' stuff, and let the football people do what they want to do.
Is capping ticket prices a good option to you?
Absolutely. I think for your average working class family that go, say you've got a family of four, you're looking at £100 upwards for the whole match day experience. So yeah, I think it does need to be capped a little bit. Appreciate clubs have lots of outgoings and wages, etc. Yeah, I do think the government do need to step in a little bit and make it affordable for everybody.
Possibly. Yeah, I do agree. It's just expensive as well. That's another thing that puts people off. I think it should be available and affordable to all, rather than, those that are rich and can afford to go to the big games, etc. So.
Back in the studio, I'm joined by MP Clive Efford, Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Football Supporters, Member of Parliament and former Minister Stewart Andrew, currently the Shadow Sports Secretary, and Niall Couper, CEO of the campaign group Fair Game. Welcome to Westminster Watch, gentlemen. Niall, let me start with you. Why on earth do we need a regulator for football?
I think when we look at the problems that have happened in football over the last decade and beyond, there's a definite need. We've had clubs disappear, Bury and Macclesfield. Right now we're seeing the situations with Sheffield Wednesday and Morecambe and those kind of issues of ownership and clubs just disappearing off the map or being threatened to. And when a club goes into administration, and there have been numerous, over 60 administrations since the start of the Premier League, it's not a harmless activity. It devastates communities. Local businesses go bankrupt. And of course, there's a disconnect between the fan, a growing disconnect between the fan. And we need to really reintroduce the fan to the heart of football. Football is supposed to be about the histories and traditions of our game. And in England, that's been lost over the last few decades.
So is it a failure of football itself to sort its own backyard out that there is now a need for a regulator? Is that what you're suggesting?
I think the answer to that is, simple answer is yes. Where we've been in this situation for a long time, and it's been getting progressively worse, and there's been numerous opportunities for the football authorities to step in and sort this out, and frankly they've failed.
Okay, so the authorities may have failed, but it came to the politicians to look at this. Let me remind people that this all started under a Conservative government when you were Minister of Sport, who introduced the legislation that is, broadly speaking, with some changes, what has become law. But you don't support it anymore. What's going on there? Why do the Conservatives no longer support a bill that they pretty much wrote and proposed themselves?
Well, look, of course we did. But let me say a number of things. First of all, we are under a new leader, and our new leader wants to make sure that we have an economy that is, less regulated insofar as trying to encourage investment into this country, people investing into football clubs, and is concerned that, over-regulation could bring about people being deterred into investing into our football clubs. It has been one of the most successful sports across the whole world when you think about its global impact. But there have been other things as well that have changed. There are additions to this bill that are going to put more burdens on
Additions
clubs.
brought in by the new government.
By the new government. So, I've been talking to some clubs lower down the leagues. They're saying that the proportion of costs actually from the government's own impact assessment shows that there's going to be a £50 million impact on the lower league clubs. That's a lot of money for those clubs.
You've got a Chancellor of the Exchequer who is in recent days launching the mantra that regulation is like a boot on the neck of business. And yet you've introduced a new regulator into one of the most successful sectors that we have, namely football. Why?
Well, because for quite some time now, there's been a huge debate in football about how we redistribute the wealth that is in the game. And we've heard from Niall about the clubs that have nearly gone bust and some have disappeared. And we needed to regulate that area of football in order to see a fair distribution of the huge resources that are there. None of this would put the Premier League's Premiership in terms of it being the best competition in the world, club competition, because the enormity of the amount of money that's coming in through TV revenue, it's only a small amount of that, relatively small, 300 million that we're talking about being redistributed around the pyramid that would solve many of the problems that
But it is successful. It has worldwide attention. It's doing extremely well. There is a risk, isn't there, if the regulator uses some of their powers, for example, to intervene in decisions that have been made in football. There's a risk it could harm. It could harm football, couldn't it, this regulator?
So I think that there's several points to pick up on here. I'll first go back to the one with Stewart raised, is from a fair game perspective, we've been pushing for a long time to make sure there is adequate support for the lower leagues, and that's really important. And we got that guarantee that there would be the extra support from training or development for lower league clubs, and that the levy would be proportionate. Those were very important things because there is an element about making sure you protect the lower leagues. In terms of the financial flow, we are talking about a league that has seen its share of European wealth amongst the top 10 leagues grow from 24% to 31% in 10 years. So it's growing massively in terms of the European level. Now, at the same time, the proportion of revenue share domestically is also growing. So it's gone from around mid-70s to 83%. So that benefit of having extra wealth is not being reflected in the rest of the football pyramid. So the Premier League is getting wealthier and wealthier, both domestically and internationally, and yet the lower league clubs are not seeing that benefit at the same level.
Will these proposals solve the problems of the clubs like Bury, for example, and the others that have been mentioned, Morecambe, by giving those lower league clubs, if you like, sustainable financial footing?
Well, look, at the end of the day, we are talking about businesses, and even during the time I was dealing with all of this, I never said that this would stop any club going under, because that, sadly, sometimes is the effect of running a business. Things go wrong. So to say that no club will ever go under would be a mistake. But I think the other perspective that we have that is slightly concerning us, when I was doing all of this, the big thing I had over and over again, questions from the likes of UEFA, was the issue around independence from government, independence from political interference. And the fact that, you know, the nomination they've put forward has proved to give donations to the Labour Party.
You're talking about David Cogan, who is the nominated head of this organisation.
That really does worry me. You know, I have to say, it's the one bit that I gave cast iron assurances to both FIFA, UEFA, to the FA, that we would make sure that, you know, that person was independent. And I'm not, you know, decrying his knowledge of the game, his, you know, he's got some expertise. I hear a lot of good things about him, but there is a letter that the government have had from UEFA that raises questions. It does raise questions.
Why are you laughing, why are you laughing about very legitimate points, aren't they?
No, I think they're being overblown. Now there is a letter, but you know,
and be clear, that
government's in the habit of not
is raising legitimate concerns from UEFA.
We're guessing about what it may or may not, because it's not been published in the way that the government doesn't generally publish correspondence That happened under the previous government, it's happening under this government, so it's being overblown in that respect.
What about the fans? I mean, this whole regulator was introduced and the review was carried out by a Conservative MP into the future of football, what to do. It was because fans felt they were being sold down the river as their clubs were going to join a Super League. Are fans' interests really going to be at the heart of the regulator? David Cogan, for example, he's a brilliant negotiator. He's worked in media and football rights. He knows stuff. But will he give the fans the fair deal they need? For example, ticketing. Will anything be in the remit of the regulator on ticketing?
I think ticketing is being looked at. Now, in terms of whether the fans have more of a say, the answer to that is obviously yes. The fan-led review led that process, put fans right at their heart. Now, from Fair Game, when we look, we represent 35 men's professional football clubs. Now, our perspective was that fans needed to have a say, needed to be engaged, and that's happening. So
well, will they be listened to? Can we guarantee they'll be listened to, or is it a bit of a talking shop, a bit of a vow?
This is going to be the devil in the detail. You know, where we're at is that we have guarantees about supporters trusts and about democratically elected bodies having a say in that consultation process. What that looks like, you know, the regulator hasn't officially got its teeth going yet, but I think there will be, and I think organisations like ourselves and our good friends the FSA will be looking at making sure that is held to account, and I think that's what people would expect.
Let me ask you, now I think personally that this was unexpected, but in the House of Commons, Clive, in the House of Commons, Stewart, a Liberal Democrat put forward the idea that there should be, I think it was at least 10 Premier League games shown free on terrestrial, free to watch TV, something like the BBC or the ITV. Could a regulator, with their powers, insist on that? And if so, would that be right, Stewart, given, for example, they are a business, the Premier League? Why should they?
Yeah, I mean, look, we didn't vote for that amendment for the simple reason that what we were hearing from a lot of clubs, not just from the big Premier ones, is that actually that could have quite a serious consequence on football finances.
And do you agree? The Labour MPs agree with that.
So the one thing we've all agreed on all along is with this regulator, it mustn't kill the goose that lays the golden egg, and the goose that lays the golden egg is the price of the TV rights. And that needs to be left alone. It's how we distribute the wealth that comes in through those rights. That's the key.
I slightly disagree with my esteemed friends here in the sense that I think as a popularist move, it was one that has a lot of appeal. And there was a good argument about that if you put games free to air, that you get a wider audience. So there is an argument there. What I think is important to go back to is that it certainly should not be within the remit of the regulator and of this bill.
I want to touch on one really important area, and you were also a Minister for Tourism in the last government as well amongst your responsibilities. We know that the Premier League football has huge soft power influence, and not just Premier League. Just think about clubs like Wrexham, for example, that have drawn lots of attention. It drives visitors to support the game, it drives visitors to this country, and it has huge soft power impact. Is a regulator likely to put any of that at risk if, like all quangos and all regulatory bodies, they get mission creep and involve themselves beyond what you, the politicians, and maybe even yourself, Niall, think they should be doing? Where does the regulator end?
Well, actually, I think that is why one of the things that has been useful in the process of the bill that's just been going through is that there is the 5-year review. So we'll be able to see in 5 years' time, is this regulator doing as it was told to do, confining it to the finances of clubs? If there is that mission creep, then obviously whoever's in government can then review it, because you're right, you know, I mean, I actually was a councillor in Wrexham, lived there. The difference football has made to that city now is just fantastic. So we would not want a regulator to crush that.
Final point to you. You have spent many years looking to achieve fair game. That's the name of your organisation. You've invested a lot of collateral in this, aren't you? Are you wholly convinced that this is going to be a win-win for fans and for clubs?
Win-win is a very difficult one.
It's a football term.
I think where we are and what we've seen happen over the last 4.5 years of campaigning, it is a really good place that we're in. Ask me what it's going to look like in 5 years. Who knows what's going to happen in the world of football in 5 years. I'm trying to think of many a football metaphor that could fit into there, but I suppose we're in the closing stages and the final minutes and
there you
all
are.
the rest
And
of
at least you haven't said it's a programme of two halves. Clive Efford, Stewart Andrew, Niall Couper, thanks for joining me here on Westminster Watch, and thanks again to all my guests for joining me, and don't forget to connect with us on X at Westminster TRT. But for now, from me and all the team, goodbye and thank you for watching.